Colonel Randall Wooten is a veteran of Vietnam and Desert Storm. He devoted 29 years of his life to the service of his country as an Air Force pilot. And he flew B-52s. That's the big one that you see flying over on his way to Barksdale during both of those conflicts. He is the president of Texas State Technical College here in Marshall. He is married to his lovely wife, Gail, and under his administration, TSTC enrollment has more than doubled in the short tenure of Colonel Randy Wooten's presidency. At this time, please join me in giving a warm welcome for Colonel Randy Wooten.
Well, the one thing I can say is I stand here among friends, and that's always a great feeling. I am indeed honored today, and it is my pleasure to speak to you on the topic of Veterans Day. I would like to begin my remarks with two quotes. The first is from British philosopher John Mill. John says, "War is an ugly thing, but not the ugliest of things. The decayed and degraded state of moral and patriotic feeling, which thinks that nothing is worth war, is much worse." The second quote comes from Liddell Hart. It says, "War is always a matter of doing evil in the hope that good may come of it. Wars or threat of wars put an end to chattel slavery in this nation, Nazism, fascism, Japanese militarism, and Soviet communism." In 1921, an unknown World War soldier was buried at Arlington National Cemetery on a hillside overlooking the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., and that became the focal point of reverence for American veterans. Such ceremonies occurred earlier in England and in France, where an unknown soldier was buried in each nation's highest place of honor. In England, it was Westminster Abbey, and in France, it was Arc de Triomphe. These memorial gestures all took place on November the 11th, giving universal recognition to celebrating the end of World War I. November the 11th, 1918, otherwise known as the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, would become known as Armistice Day. Armistice meaning the suspension of hostilities by mutual consent, a truce. Armistice Day officially received its name in America in 1926 through a congressional resolution. It became a national holiday 12 years later by similar congressional action. If the idealistic hopes had been realized that World War I was the war to end all wars, November the 11th might still be called Armistice Day. But only a few years after that holiday was proclaimed, war broke out in Europe. 16.5 million Americans took part in World War II. 407 of them died in service. In 1954, after World War II had required the greatest mobilization of soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen that this nation has ever known, after American forces had fought aggression in Korea, the 83rd Congress amended the Act of 1938 by striking the words armistice and inserting the words veterans. Veterans Day was so named because peace, unfortunately, doesn't last forever. History never stops proving that point. For the United States in the last quarter century, war has drifted in and out of a restless, distant slumber. It has bolted awake in places like Lebanon, Bosnia, Somalia, Panama, Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. These are locations hard enough for most Americans to find on a map, let alone understand the often complicated reasons why our troops were asked to fight there. On our own continent, War has slept for nearly 140 years before everything changed on September the 11th, 2001. War did not just awaken in America, it erupted in broad daylight before our disbelieving eyes. Fiery explosions, dust and rubble of crumbling buildings. Americans in suits and ties and dresses and heels, some in military fatigues, were running for their lives, jumping out of windows, as a billowing, smoky cloud of horror closed in on them. Ordinary Americans who at best possess a Hollywood understanding of war could not easily absorb impressions like these. War veterans, though, are different. Each experienced in chaos, they often know from fighting in distant lands where terror has ruled that America has been lucky for a good long time. Veterans also know the price of peace, the lives it invariably costs, the difficulty of recapturing its blessings should it escape, as it always does. General Douglas MacArthur put it this way in a speech to the U.S. Military Academy in 1962. The soldier, above all, prays for peace, for he must suffer and bear the deepest wounds and scars of war. Veterans also know that power and the ability to execute it is the surest route to a peaceful end. Senator J. William Fulbright explained it this way to his fellow senators. In a contrast between a hawk and a dove, the hawk has the greatest advantage, not because it is a better bird, but because it is a bigger bird with lethal talons and a highly developed will to use them. As workers continued to pick through the rubble of New York City after the first year after 9/11, Americans, war veterans, non-veterans, reservists, guardsmen, active duty personnel all found themselves standing together, all sharing a sense of patriotism, faith, courage, and resolve. These are the values that veterans have always drawn upon in times of crisis, when the price of peace just might be paid with human lives. Some veterans, some of you in the audience today, bear visible signs of their service, a missing limb, a jagged scar, a certain look in the eye. Others may carry their evidence inside them, a pin holding a bone together, a piece of shrapnel in a leg, or perhaps another sort of inner steel. Except in parades, however, the men and women who have kept America safe wear no badge or emblem. You can't tell a vet just by looking. So what is a vet? They are the men and women who for many reasons don the uniform of our country to stand between freedom and tyranny, to take up the sword of justice in defense of the liberties we hold dear, to preserve peace and to calm the winds of war. Your mothers, your fathers, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your neighbors, the shop owner down the street, your teachers, your favorite athlete, political leaders, each one of these could be a veteran. But as much as they may differ by race, gender, age, national origin, or profession, they each share a common love for our great nation. A love great enough to put their very lives on the line, to guarantee the way of life we enjoy today and to secure that way of life for tomorrow's generations. The title veteran must be earned. It is a title endowed by a grateful nation on citizens whose shoulders were broad enough to carry the weight of our common defense. It is a title that speaks of courage and sacrifice in the face of mortal danger. The veteran considers their service not only as an honor, but also as a privilege offered to few. It is a title that speaks of compassion and heartbreak in the terrible wake of war. It is a title that speaks of love of country and the belief in America's goodness and our strength. Those people who served our nation in uniform are the best people our society has to offer, period. There is no doubt that many here today are praying for loved ones who have been called to active duty or deployed to countries around the world. And surely there is no doubt in America that all of our veterans stand united behind these young men and women. George Orwell once said, "People sleep peaceably in their beds at night only because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf." Let us thank God for these rough men and women who have been sentinels of liberty for more than 230 years. Even as I speak, our military is making this country proud. They are all over the world tracking terrorism at its many sources. There are three brief thoughts I want to close with. I would like to share with you as we remember our veterans. The first is entitled The Soldier, but could just as well be entitled The Veteran. It is the soldier, not the minister, who has given us freedom of religion. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who has given us freedom to protest. It is the soldier and not the lawyer who has given us the right to a fair trial. It is the soldier, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protesters to burn the flag. A second thought. Only two defining forces have ever offered to die for you. The first is Jesus Christ, and the second is the American GI. One died for your soul, the other for your freedom. And lastly, if you can read, thank a teacher. If you can read in English, thank a soldier. So remember, each time you see somebody who has served our country, just lean over and say thank you. That's all most people need, and in most cases, it'll mean more than any medal they may have received. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Colonel. And one died for your soul, and one died for your freedom.